Well, I'm Natalie. It's nice to meet you. This is
Hey,
Macy.
nice to meet you. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you.
We're excited. We just wanted to talk about your daughter's case and talk about your situation and just how everything happened. This episode will come out on Monday.
Okay.
So if there's anything
Oh,
you don't want in it, up until I usually do editing on Sunday. So if
okay.
between now and Sunday you're like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that, just let me know and I'll edit it out.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. We can do that. Yeah. I think, nothing has ever changed in our story and nothing is off limits because this needs this needs to get out. People need to hear what's happening.
Yep.
So
We
I doubt you'll hear from me, but you never know.
yeah, so just start off with the what happened.
Really kind of from the beginning, I
Yeah.
would say, from your perspective.
Okay. Well, okay. So I have a daughter. Um, I think this all began in right around COVID. It was shortly after COVID. My daughter graduated in 2020, so she kind of missed out on all the senior year stuff. And with COVID being the way it was, she was kind of going stir crazy in the house. Met a guy online. She ended up they ended up getting together, and it wasn't long after that they ended up getting pregnant. Of course they got married, um, and with it being COVID, she didn't have the opportunity to bring people with her to the OB appointments. She was 19 years old, and he was 20, so they were very young. I don't think he even was allowed to go into most of the appointments. So she didn't really know things to ask or do or, any of that. And they were living with us for a little bit. And as teenagers tend to do, um, we were struggling with having them live with us and them working and doing what they needed to get out on their own. So things would get tense and then, they'd be okay and they'd get tense. Well, it finally got to the point, and she was pregnant, that we had to tell them that they were going to have to find another place to live. It was upsetting my whole house. So they ended up moving out. She had the baby. Well, I'll say this. I'll back it up to where we didn't know at the time what was happening. um, it took us time to research and study once this incident happened to figure out what was happening. So I will go up to Terrell gave birth 5 weeks early to Parker, and he did have complications right after birth. I guess because he was early, um, he was having trouble breathing. He was having seizure-like activities. They ended up sending him to a hospital in Columbus, um, to the NICU. He was there for probably 11 days. They did different tests and things like that. He was on oxygen. I don't know a lot of the medical terms and everything, but he was there for about 11 days. They stayed in the Ronald McDonald House. Um, Once they were discharged, they were able to come home. And it was, shortly after that, um, things were a little tense between her husband and us, my husband and I. And so there was not a lot of communication going on at that time. So I didn't know until the day after they went into the emergency room. They had, well, Terrell had got up early in the morning to tend to Parker. He was 8 weeks old. And she noticed when she was going to change his diaper that his right femur, his leg was swollen. And so she did what any young mom would do. A lot of times she would call me and asked me advice, different things with his reflux and things like that. But I guess because we weren't on real good terms at the moment, they did what they should have done. They took him straight to the emergency room. And that's where they told him that his right femur was fractured. It wasn't just a hairline, it was like a spiral fracture. And so that raised, you know, concerns about something else. They went ahead, and the hospital they sent him to was in Griffin Wellstar, Spalding. And they immediately contacted DFACS and sent him on to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, to Eggleston. Yes, it was Eggleston, where they went ahead and did the full skeletal x-ray, and they had found a total of 7 fractures. The rest of them were not like the leg. They were just, I guess, you know, like hairline fractures, if they were even fractures. So they went ahead and pretty much ushered Tara Lynn and her husband out of the hospital by security, and told them that they were taking Parker and placing him in foster care. And the reason why they placed him in foster care is because they were angry at me and my husband, as teenagers can be, stubborn. And I guess they didn't realize the seriousness of the situation. So they did not give them our names that we would take Parker. And he was placed in foster care. Once they called me the next day and were telling us what had happened, I told them immediately, I will take him. You know, I will take care of him until this gets sorted out. But at this point, he was already placed in foster care, and it took a while for me to get approved through DFACS. They had to come out. They had to, you know, they did everything. They looked at our house, our financials, you know, they did everything to make sure that we were able to handle taking care of him. And eventually they did place him with us. I work in the school system, so I'm a mandated reporter. That's kind of important to me. They did place him with us. Since I was working, it was right, this started on April 30th of 2021. That is the day that they took Parker to the hospital. Because it was still a month of school, I was working and he was with a foster family. So we were working it out to where I would get him for his appointments. I would take him to his appointments, and then on the weekends and any free time I had, I would have him until school ended. And once school ended, they placed him with me altogether. So he was with me from that point. It wasn't long, like I think it was less than a week that I had him permanently to their first dependency hearing. And at that hearing, I didn't really know what this was about. We've never been involved in a situation like this, so it was all confusing and new, and I had no idea what a dependency hearing was. And they were just trying to see whether he should stay with my husband and I. And I thought since they placed him with me that had already been determined. However, at that hearing, the judge did not like the fact that my daughter and I were somewhat close, and she felt that I would allow my daughter to see Parker. They had absolutely no contact with Parker, no visitation, no FaceTiming, nothing, no contact whatsoever. And she feared that my husband and I would allow her to see Parker. So because she thought that could happen, that would put Parker in harm's way, she removed him from our home and placed him back in foster care. Of course, I did everything they ever asked. Anything DFACS asked, anything the court asked, we have obeyed and done everything they have asked. I ended up having to hire an attorney because there was no way in this world I was going to allow my grandson to stay in foster care if I could help it. He needed to be with his family. And so we hired an attorney, Allison Crane, who was amazing. She came in, she did exactly what she planned to do, and I believe she really irritated the VFACS workers. She irritated their lawyers, and I mean, just ticked them off. And from that point, we won custody back of Parker. We won, but it kind of like just set a spiral of things to just go haywire from that point on. They were against us in everything we ever tried. The funny thing to me is, and I don't mind who knows this, when DFACS believed that I was on Parker's side, which I was. Parker's my grandson, he's innocent, and I was going to do everything in my power to protect Parker. Once they told me, they actually, the guardian ad litem actually called me and told me the day before court of that dependency hearing that I needed to choose my daughter or I needed to choose my grandson, that I could not have both, that if they thought, if the judge or DFACS had any inkling of an idea that I was going to support my daughter or help my daughter through this, they were going to take Parker away from me. And that's a very hard position to be in, when you know that your daughter has done nothing wrong, but you have to choose which one. And I told them, I said, well, my daughter she was, I think, 20 at the time. I said, I don't even know if she was. She might have still been 19, but I said, she's an adult. She's going to have to figure this out. I'm going to do what I have to do for Parker. And that's what I told that guardian ad litem. And when the judge took him away from me anyway, I determined, okay, I'm going for both of my kids, my daughter and my grandson. They've done nothing wrong, either one of them. So I then began to try and talk to my daughter and see where we had to go from here. That guardian ad litem called me after that hearing, and he told me that he understood it was a terrible position to be in as a parent. He wouldn't wish it on anybody. That there is one thing that we could do. He told me that if I could get my daughter and her husband to surrender their rights to their child, that to us, we would be able to adopt him. It is not anything that I ever wanted to take away from my daughter. And I wouldn't have done this any other reason other than DFACS works on a timeline. And this had began in the middle of COVID. So hearings were continued, postponed to another month, to 2 months later, whatever. And they work on a timeline that's 15 months long. Her timeline was concurrent, and I can't remember what it was called, concurrent and then termination. So as time was going on and months were passing by, we're getting up to this 15-month timeline. If they don't meet their requirements of what DFACS wanted them to do as far as their case plan, by the time they reached that 15-month timeline, they were going to terminate their rights. And we would lose Parker to the system forever. He would be adopted to somebody else. So with time continually being pushed off, hearings being pushed off because of COVID, because of different reasons, we were getting closer and closer to that timeline, and we were not going to do that. We were not going to lose our grandson. So we did talk to Terilyn, and we talked to Tyler, and we agreed as a family that they would surrender their rights, and we would be able to adopt our grandson and be able to keep him in our family. And it wasn't like the defects attorney had said in one of the hearings, oh, well, they don't care about their kid. They've already surrendered their rights. They had to have done this. They don't care about him. And that was not the case at all. Our whole intentions of adopting Parker were so that hopefully one day when this case is over and their names are cleared because they did not abuse their child, that they would still be able to have a relationship with their child. And it always felt like they were blaming Terilyn and Tyler because they surrendered their rights, that they did it, that's proof that they did it. They don't want him after all. And that was never the intention. So after we adopted Parker, that really ticked him off. The guardian ad litem had told me that what we were doing was, it's perfectly legal, but it's almost like the judge's hands are tied because it's the law. They surrendered, we get him, that's it. And they kind of look at it as being underhanded or circumventing the system, in order, to do that. But the guardian ad litem told me to do it. And then when we did it, I have never seen somebody so angry in court. And he threatened to come after my husband and I, that he was going to prove us unfit. The person that actually came and did our home inspection for our house, for the adoption, she told me, and I think this was with the second child, I'll get to that, but we ended up adopting our second grandson that Terilyn and Tyler had in the middle of this mess, pretty much the same way. But that guardian ad litem saw the woman that did our home inspection for our adoption at court one day to a completely unrelated case. She was just there, not having anything to do with us. But he stopped her outside the courtroom and asked her to lie about my husband and I so that the judge would not grant our adoption. She told me that to my face. So, I have seen so much, it's just corrupt things that have happened through our case, through Pike County Courthouse, from holding our background checks until they expire, refusing to send information over to the next process. It has been unbelievable things that it feels like they're taking it out on me and my husband and trying to sabotage every step that we were doing because they were angry. And I feel like it's because they were angry with our attorney, the way she came in and she did what she was supposed to do. She followed the law. She didn't break any rules. She did what she did, and we won, and we got him. Terilyn and Tyler spent 2 months in jail when they were first arrested. When they were released from jail, I actually bonded my daughter out. That made them mad because I bonded her out. I did not bond him out. She got out. She stayed with me for one night. The apartment that they had, nobody went in to clean it up when they came and arrested them. So they had bugs and things like that. So we wanted to clean it up before she went to stay back over there. So she stayed with me for one night. And I did pay 1 month rent for her so they could have their apartment when they got out, because they're not allowed to be around Parker. We were getting Parker, so she was not allowed to stay with us. They needed their apartment. And that's one of the things that the caseworker got up on the stand and lied about. With me sitting there, started the lies that were coming out of her mouth during court about me is really when my eyes were opened and I started seeing things for the way they were. But Terilyn worked super hard. She got a job. She started working. She was saving every penny she had. She earned up enough money to bond her husband out of jail. She couldn't do it herself. She just earned the money, and she got her mother-in-law to bond him out. They were out for a good while, up until this case happened, the trial a few weeks ago. They did get pregnant again. Not trying to, but it happened. And of course, I was devastated. I'm like, we're fixing to bring another child into this mess. And I was completely worried that they were going to take the baby. I knew they were going to take the baby. And, but Terilyn, you know, she started doing some research and was hoping and praying that they didn't. We actually went to court with an attorney, a criminal attorney we hired for Terilyn, the day before she had Reid, baby number 2. We were in court the day before, and our attorney asked the judge about this baby. I think we were there mostly to ask for visitation rights of Parker. I have never seen another case where the parents have been denied 100% no visitation. Usually I've seen where parents are allowed to have supervised visitation, and they were not granted any visitation. So they have not seen Parker to this day since he was 8 weeks old. I do send pictures occasionally, so she does get some pictures and some videos, but that's how she has seen him grow for 3 years. And so we were in court the day before. She was actually in labor the day that we were in court. And our attorney at that time had asked the judge, because he denied visitation again, but she asked, what do we do about this new baby? Do we need to seek guardianship for this new baby? And the judge told her that it was not necessary. Not necessary. And I think that conversation took place back in chambers, because I think that Terilyn and Tyler was already dismissed at that time. And we waited for her outside of the courtroom. And when she came out, we asked her, what are we supposed to do with Reid when he's born? Do we need to take guardianship? Because her bond restriction says absolutely no contact with Parker, and she has to be supervised with all other children. Well, Reid was another child, so we're thinking she would have to be supervised. Well, the judge told our lawyer that was not necessary. So she told us what he said. It was not necessary. She told us we did not have to seek guardianship. We took that as meaning that she would be able to take her child home from the hospital. We're not familiar with all of this court stuff, laws. It's really over our head. She gave birth to Reid. She took Reid home from the hospital. When DFACS found out that she had Reid at home, they swooped in without a court order, with the cops banging on her door. She was fixing to head out to her post-op, her post-maternal, whatever the appointment after birth, appointment, and the cops were at her door. She was there unsupervised. So they sat there for 2 hours waiting for a judge to sign a court order to remove Reid. My first attorney that I had has also become a friend. She advised me when I told her what this other attorney told us about the judge saying it wasn't necessary. She said, go get it anyway. Go get your guardianship anyway. Well, I didn't know that if you had guardianship papers, that you had to have physical custody of the child. So we did go get guardianship papers approved through the court. And I told them when they were there that day, I said, look, I have guardianship. I'll go get the papers and I'll show you, and I'll take him home and I'll take care of him. And they refused. They would not allow me to take him. They would not allow any family. My sister-in-law was there. They said absolutely not. They would not let her have him. They placed him in foster care. I had to hire another attorney and go through the whole process again, and was able to adopt Reid. So we have custody of both of our kids, grandkids. They're both adopted, and you know, Terilyn and Tyler have had visitation with Reid. Of course, now they're in prison, so they don't get to see either one. It has been a long process. It has taken 3 years to get from April 30th, and it was almost to the day, 3 years later, that trial began. I think trial began on the 29th, April 29th of this year. It was a 2-week trial, almost 2 weeks. The state listed me as a witness, so I was never able to even be in the trial. I didn't get to be in there and hear any of it. They never called me to testify. I think that was their plan all along, was to just keep me out, because I know everything about this case. And there were certain things that the judge would not allow to be talked about during trial. So I think that the jury didn't have the whole story. And unfortunately, it was a battle between experts. When I got Parker, he was, I think, about 10 months old. I took him to just about every doctor I could think of to try and figure out why Parker had fractures, why his eyes, he had busted blood vessels in his eyes. I know that's a symptom of shaken baby syndrome, but he did not have any fractures. No, his skull was not fractured at all. So they pretty much ruled out shaken baby syndrome. I took him, of course, for genetic testing. I went to Emory Genetics, and I talked to a doctor there, and that doctor came in, and he immediately was like, I've got it all right here in my computer. They said it's abuse, it's abuse. He refused to do any genetic testing. He, you know, I told him, I'm willing to pay for it out of my pocket. I will do whatever it takes to get some more testing done, because we know this was not abuse. And he just looked at me flat out. This was abuse, and I'm not doing any testing. I took him to another doctor, another geneticist out of the CHOA, you know, network. And I took him to a pediatric geneticist in Alpharetta, Georgia. Her name was Dr. Krishnamurthy. She believed us from the beginning, and she did genetic testing. Something did come back on the genetic testing, and it's something that has not been studied or explored. It's a certain gene, and it said on the paperwork something about a gene of unknown significance, and really there's not been enough studying done on it, so they don't know what it is. But it did have something to do with bones. It was a gene deletion of ZNF675.
Can you have her repeat that?
So they were interested in that. They
Can you repeat
they
that?
called us.
The gene deletion.
That gene?
Yes.
Yeah, it's ZNF675.
F is in Frank.
And of course, yes,
Okay.
ZNF.
Okay.
I'm not a geneticist. This means absolutely nothing to me. It's a foreign language. So
Yeah.
all they told all they told me was it's not been studied. They don't know what it is. So they did want to do some genetic testing on Terilyn and Tyler to see which parent it came from. But this genetic testing was not going to be like testing of all of the genes, like a whole genome, whatever sequencing. It was just testing for this gene to see which parent it came from. It came from my daughter. So, but we don't know what it is. And we don't know where to go to find out what it is since it hasn't been studied. I did, right before trial began, get a phone call from Dr. Krishnamurthy. And they told me that there is a doctor that is very enthusiastic about figuring out what this gene is and wanted to know if we were willing to let him send over all of Parker's paperwork, medical stuff that they found, the genetic testing, and do some more studying on it. And I'm like, absolutely, of course, please. And it's awful funny too that that couple days later, after I got that phone call, they called me back and sent over a lab order to have a bones density scan done on Parker 3 years later. That should have done on day one when they took him, in my opinion.
Yep.
I don't, and then I took him to a place, and the place that I ended up taking him to can't even read it because he's a child. So I have to find another. I'm very nervous at this point to go back to CHOA. Anytime he needs an appointment, I try to steer away from CHOA. I don't want to go back. And apparently they're the only place now that can do this bone density scan. I don't know if it would show anything 3 years later at this point. But I'm going to do it and hope that something will come back, because we know there's something more to this story than abuse. We have, let's see, Dr. Krishnamurthy asked me to take Parker to get his eyes checked, his teeth checked, go to an orthopedic, get his bones, because he had really, his legs were bowed. And I'm like, that's kind of, I mean, I know it could be normal, but we didn't know if it was within normal or if it was a little more. So we went and got that checked, and an endocrinologist. I took Parker to the dentist. His teeth look good. A lot of times with like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which we come to find out he does have, they will have sometimes their teeth will look transparent, kind of. His teeth looked pretty good, so that wasn't an issue. We took him to get his eyes checked. Bless his heart, I had no idea, but he has to wear glasses. So I was told that has something to do with EDS2, the connective tissue and all of this. He's been wearing glasses since probably around a year old. I took him to the orthopedic. He said his bones are looking good. The bowed legs, he said, will straighten out in time. So he's looking pretty good there. We took him to an endocrinologist to try and get some more answers maybe from them. Now, I explained to these doctors what we were going through, and every doctor that I've taken him to, they've had all of his information right there in the computer. They've all seen that CHOA has said that he was abused, and the endocrinologist basically, he did a little blood work, but he basically let me know he was not getting involved. He would not do, he wouldn't even give me his expert opinions on children with bone issues at birth. Like, I'm not even about Parker. You tell me about, about children at birth and what could cause some of this. He wouldn't get involved. They did blood work, his PTH was low, but that doctor said it wasn't low enough. Just like when DFACS took Parker, they said his vitamin D was low, but it wasn't low enough. And through my own research, I have come to learn that that's not true. His vitamin D was enough to, cause issues. My daughter, during pregnancy, she was diagnosed with marginal cord insertion. And I don't know if you guys know what that is, but that's where the umbilical cord is attached to a different area of the placenta. So it's not in the middle like it's supposed to be. So the baby doesn't get all the nutrients that they need, the blood flow and everything that they need. The doctor's office basically said, oh, it's not a problem. We're not worried about it. She's 19. Nobody else is allowed to come in and question. She had no idea that that could have been something. And I've done my research on that. And there's things that should have taken place with that.
Yep.
She should have been set up for, what was it? Something about, she needed to be near a NICU to start with. And she had very low vitamin D. Her vitamin D was so low, like 2-3 years before Parker at a doctor's appointment. I don't think they ever checked her vitamin D with Parker's pregnancy, but it was checked after, and it was checked again when she was pregnant with Reid, and her vitamin D was very low. She was put on vitamin D supplements to help bring that up with Reid. She was on nausea medicine that she took so often because she was so sick with Parker. She was vomiting every day. She was losing weight. She busted blood vessels in her own eyes from vomiting while she was pregnant with Parker. She was also on anxiety medicine because she has always been had severe anxiety. And from our research, all of this stuff together kind of just adds up to what took place in Parker and his health. His dad, once I started researching, and I really feel like God was giving me insight once this began, and I started learning some things and I started researching. I remember just riding down the road and things would just fill my head, and I'd have to just stop and write or pull out my phone and start recording. And because so many ideas were coming to me, and articles that I was reading were the exact same as our situation. And I was YouTubing videos to try and find out what in the world is going on with our grandson. And I would find other families that were going through the same thing or had gone through the same thing. And that's when I learned about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I found a Facebook page. It's called Fractured Families. And it's filled with families going through the exact same thing that we have been going through. And we have never heard of any of this. So as I'm looking and reading other people's stories, I start realizing their stories are the exact same as ours, almost to the T, to the fractures, to the number of fractures, to the bones that are fractured, to the vitamin D, to just so many things were like the exact same. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So there's all these families that apparently abuse their child the same way. They're the same age. It was unbelievable. And through that page, it's like a support group for other parents, other families going through it. And I learned about Dr. Hollick, Dr. Miller. They've got a list of doctors that we can reach out to do some investigating and find out, let them, if they're willing, I know a lot of them have retired at this point, but we can send, I was able to send Parker's medical records, his x-rays to these doctors, and a lot of them work pro bono. Some of them don't, because now that's their livelihood. I think once these doctors are in it, for Dr. Hollick, the same thing. He worked for Harvard University. He works for Harvard University. He worked for a hospital there, and once he began helping, he's not a young man by any means. He's in his 80s, and he's been doing vitamin D work for over 40 years. And once the hospital started seeing that he was helping families like ours, they let him go.
Wow.
And because they have, he's basically stepped in and is interfering with their money scheme. All these doctors are making money off of taking our children. The child abuse pediatricians are benefiting directly, from what I understand from DFACS, from the government, when they take our children. The man that testified in our case never even saw Parker. And he was the state's main witness. They hire him, they pay him to come testify. It was another doctor, Dr. Erin Wade, who was the one that saw Parker, and she didn't even finish all of her schooling. She was not certified when she was deemed an expert by family juvenile court on our case. She wasn't even in our trial. They didn't even bring her in. I think they knew that she had made too many mistakes, and she was going to mess up. So they brought in their doctor above her, who never saw Parker, who only looked at the paperwork. And he got up there and testified. It's just, I've tried everything I can to fight back, but it just feels like it's so overwhelming, and not enough people know what's going on. And I feel like, there's not much that we can do. I feel like our jury was a lot of older individuals who don't have, probably, and this is just my opinion, probably don't have access to social media, don't use social media. And, they haven't heard about this. They don't know what's going on. I don't know. Whew. And I don't know if you guys have any questions or what I need to.
Oh, yes.
I know it makes sense.
I have so many questions.
How long was their sentence?
Okay, so there I feel, and this is just my opinion too, but after the jury came back, they had so many counts, felony counts. They had a total of, I think it was 19 felony counts each.
Oh.
What happened was, when they did their first skeletal x-ray, they found 7 fractures. When I think it was about a month later, I had to take him back for a second skeletal x-ray, and they said they found 2 more. But they said, and now he's been in foster care for a month, and they've just found 2 more fractures. And they tried to say, well, they just missed them the first time. Yet I've seen the fractures. Me and my daughter have seen the x-rays, and we've seen those 2 new fractures, and they didn't look like they had any healing. It looks kind of like a puffy cloud around the bone where new bone is forming, and you can see the healing. Of course, we're not doctors, but everybody I've had look at it have said the same thing. This is a new fracture. This is not old. So apparently he got 2 new fractures while he was in foster care.
They got charged with it.
Yes.
Were
Yes, because they said
were the people that
Took care of it.
took care of him, were they questioned or
No,
investigated at all? Or
no.
even not saying that they did something, just that because of what's gone on with him health wise, they were never oh wow.
No, and
Why am I not
actually,
shocked?
Yeah.
God.
D DFACS, you know, they told, like I said, they did the OI testing. They told us that they did the OI testing. When me and my daughter were looking through her records, we noticed where it said the OI test was not performed because the patient was discharged from the hospital. So we're like, so they never did an OI test? Well, then we questioned that, and they came back and said, oh, it was done at a later time. I didn't see any records that said it was done. So I don't know if it was really ever done, but I also know that they don't do, there's many different types of OI, and you can't test for just one. You have to test for the whole array of them. And they did a test, and that one test came back saying he didn't have OI, and that was it. That was it. He doesn't have OI. This is abuse. They never, and it took us a while to learn about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So of course we didn't know anything about that at the beginning. But I will tell you too, during the trial, the state's own witness, the radiologist that looked at the x-rays, was on the stand and said, oh, by the way, 2 of those fractures aren't actually fractures. They're not actually fractures? What? So you've been sitting on this for 3 years, that you've got charges on my child that she fractured his tibias and they're not actually fractured. They never dropped those charges.
Wow.
So they were still charged with those fractures that were not fractures. That's why I said earlier, if they were, any of those were actual fractures, we don't know.
Yeah.
It could have been anything. It could have been, I think it's called metaphyseal lesions. There's, you know, and we had our expert doctors look at these things, and they said that he did have rickets. State's witnesses said he didn't. So it was a battle between our experts and their experts. And I think one of the things that really hurt us in our trial is our attorney, Terrelyn's attorney, that I hired, told us that he was going to allow me and Terrelyn to testify. And as the trial went on, he felt like we were ahead in the trial, that he didn't want to do more harm than good. So he decided not to let us testify. And I think it did the most damage because
Okay, that was going to be one of my
Terrelyn should have
questions.
been on.
Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions when you said that the state had actually listed you as a witness and then never called you to the stand. One of my questions was, could you have been called as a witness for the defense
Yeah,
and then been able to speak on everything that clearly the state didn't want you to speak about?
right. And I wish that he would have at this point, but I really was hearing so many good things were happening in the beginning of the trial, where our lawyers was just, I mean, he was coming back at him and he was doing a superb job. And, you know, they were reading the jury's faces and things like this, and they felt like they were doing pretty good. And then he was like, I don't want to. Terrelyn is, my daughter is such a sweet girl. She is, it's like I sheltered her growing up. I raised her, I raised my kids in church.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're strong Christians. And she never experienced a lot of things that kids experience. She was never interested. She was never interested in drinking or drugs or hanging out with the boys. And she never really left. And like my middle daughter was different. She was all about the friends and the social life. And but Terrelyn wasn't. And so she really, I feel like I hurt her by sheltering her as much as I did, because I've always taught her to tell the truth. if she would have a falling out with a kid at school, I would tell her, go back and talk to them. Maybe they don't know you feel this way. You talk to them and, try and clear things up. And she was just always a kid that would tell the truth. So I feel like this whole situation has just been, it just hit the wrong person because she just doesn't know how to fight back. She didn't know how to, and they've told the same story from day one. They've never changed their story at all, and I know that when people lie, they're going to get caught. It's going to falter. It's going to fall. You're going to have to tell another lie to cover up another lie, and I knew when my daughter, I went to speak to a sheriff of the town over from us that we've known. My husband's known, he went to school with him. And we told him, our daughter told us they did not do anything to their child. And he said, oh, but you'd be surprised how many parents come back and say, oh, my child never would do it, and come to find out their child did it. And I was like, no, but you don't understand. When your child looks at you in the eye and says, Mom, I didn't do this, you know that they're telling the truth. And she said, I would not even be with Tyler if he did anything to me or my child. She said, we didn't do this. And I believe her. It's just, I can't help but to believe her. And then to see all the things come to pass that have come to pass, and all the things that we have learned about this case, it's obvious. It's obvious when you've got this many families going through the exact same thing, and all these families are starting to come forward. There's a problem in this system, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, to be honest, I think there's more than one problem. It's like everything's a problem. To go back to the very beginning, when they took Parker into the hospital, because his leg was swollen, and then, obviously they kind of jumped immediately into the abuse and then took him away. Like, was there ever, any sort of therapist or, family counselor, or even someone, from law enforcement that questioned or had a session of any sorts with Terrellyn or Tyler?
Yeah, they had their social worker come in and talk to them about it. I know that they had interviews with law enforcement. I don't know what all was said, but they did question them a lot about what had happened. Did any accidents happen? Did he fall? Did you drop him? And none of that took place. There was nothing. There was no reason. I mean, he was 8 weeks old. He couldn't do anything on his own.
Right.
So there was no reason for the injury. And we don't know what happened other than he was born early. The last month is when all the bone forms. He had low vitamin D. And the only thing that we can think of that could have caused that is diaper changes, moving his legs, putting them in and out of onesie, which wouldn't be an issue with a normal child who didn't have those issues. But when they're born with the bone issues already, just the movement of the leg, the diaper changes, their tummy gets upset, and you kind of rotate their legs like in the bicycle motion, that could have caused something to fracture, or it was fractured at birth. We actually have a picture at birth that it looks like his leg is swollen in the same area. So we've even questioned if it was fractured at birth. And then as time went on with the movement, with all the other stuff that it caused it to snap the way that it did.
Just so you know, too, hips and shoulders are actually usually in birth. Those are the spots that
I've heard collarbones break.
Right.
I've heard
Collarbones.
legs. I mean, they're so fragile that
Yes.
it's
And especially when they're born early. Like she said,
Exactly.
like the bones are kind of like the last thing that really come full into like full
Right.
in the last
And
month or two. And if he was born 5 weeks early, like that's literally like the last bit.
yes, yes.
Because
And
the
then
bones are not
he had
as
marginal cord
vital as
insertion.
organs and things. So the bones are the, hate to say it, but kind of like the last priority for building of the baby.
Yeah.
And then the marginal cord insertion, he wasn't getting all the nutrients
Yes.
to begin
And
with.
her also having
So
vitamin D and things like that, like even if without the cord and the placenta and all those things, the low vitamin D, even if he had full access to things from the placenta, it's still not to say that he wouldn't have still had issues with the strength of his bones and
Mhm.
what they're capable of enduring.
Yep.
Because drink your milk, vitamin D
Yeah.
type of thing. So even
and
if that didn't happen,
she exclusively breastfed him. So he was getting no vitamin D that way either.
And
She
that's what I
didn't
was
have
gonna
it
say
to
too. Every bit of
give to
vitamin
him.
D that she had was going to him, but then again, because of the cord and where it was, he's not getting that much, but her body is making it all for him, even though he's still not
Receiving it
getting
all.
as much as he should.
Yeah.
And then on top of the cord thing, not getting as much as he should. So hers is gonna plummet and he's still not getting any. So
Yeah.
it was like a perfect storm of lack of vitamin D.
Yeah.
Like
Perfect storm. Exactly.
where she's super low and he's hardly getting any at all. And truth be told, with all of that, like even if he wasn't born 5 weeks early, he probably still
Would have had
would
this.
have had a deficiency in vitamin D
Yeah.
by a significant amount.
And they immediately put him on vitamin D supplements when they took him. It wasn't low enough to cause any of these problems, but they immediately put him on vitamin D supplements.
Right, because that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So when the judge denied visitation for them, supervise any sort of visitation, did the judge give any reasoning for this, since it is really not common at all? Like you said, typically it would be supervised or at like a family center or something like that. Like was there any reason?
no, there was no reason. And
I feel like that
and
should be required.
I do too.
I think that the state, they would just get up there and talk about what a horrific, malicious crime this was that they did to him. And he never really questioned it. The first hearing that I sat in with them in criminal court, the DA got up there and she started talking about, there was a chunk of skin missing out of Parker's penis, and that was abuse.
Was he
There was
circumcised?
a chunk of skin missing.
What?
No, he was born with hypospadias.
What?
He was born with hypospadias. It's a birth defect.
How is
And my husband had it, his father had it, my son had it, Parker had it, and Reid had it. It was a birth defect that they called child abuse. He had to have surgery to have it corrected.
This is so.
And I had to sit there with my mouth shut and say nothing.
Yeah.
Because what hypospadias is where the urethra does not form correctly all the way out to the end of the penis, and the opening is underneath. So the foreskin does not grow all the way around. It's only on the top half of the penis. So yes, there was a chunk of skin missing from his penis. It was a birth defect, but they called it child abuse.
I really wish she would have been called as a witness,
I do too.
because
And
a
that's
lot
one of
of
the
these
reasons
things
why
are
she wasn't.
being more and more hereditary, genetic. There are so many patterns here that I feel like medical this is all based on medical facts or medical opinions, but the expertise is not being shown fairly or properly.
Examples of that.
Like it's just not. Oh, another question. the caseworker that was like lying on the stand, do you
Yeah.
mind to say or tell us the specific things that they were saying that were untrue?
Yeah. She told the court that Terrellyn was living with me when she came out of jail. Like I told you, she stayed with me for one night because of bugs. I wasn't allowed to even speak in court to correct that.
So if we stay at a Holiday Inn one night, we live there.
Yeah.
If I go stay the night at your
I was paying all of her
Yeah.
bills.
Oh,
She said I was paying all of her bills, which I was not. I paid 1 month rent so she could keep her apartment.
yeah.
She basically was saying, that I was doing everything for Terrellyn and backing her up and correcting, trying to cover up Terrellyn's lies. I mean, it just really, I was in shock because I thought this woman and I were able to talk. She'd been to my house and we talked freely, and she seemed fine with me and on my side. And I remember when she came and picked Parker up from my house, I said, "This is not forever. This is just for now." And she said, "That's a good way to look at it." And I thought, that she was really on my side, but it like flipped completely. And then she wouldn't allow, there was issues with visitation. I was granted visitation with Parker while he was in foster care, but I started noticing with the foster mom that his head was going flat in the back. In pictures that she would send me, I could see that he had a flat head. And I started questioning her. His head really is looking flat. Can we get this looked at? He may need a helmet. And she would say, "Yeah, I'll get it looked at." And then time would go by and nothing. And I would ask again, "Are any closer to getting his head checked?" And I think after about the third time, I still got the text. I still got the text where I questioned her again. And she's like, "I'm doing everything that I can as fast as I can." And I said, "It doesn't feel like it to me." And she really got offended. And then she called DFAC's caseworker and the supervisor and basically said I was harassing her, and they stopped all visitation. So from that point on, I wasn't even allowed to see my grandson. And it was really because I was concerned about his head.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, we've got bone issues going on here, and now his head is going flat.
It could also be
And
where he's laying flat for too long.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
Where he's
He's
not being
laying
picked
flat
up.
for too long, or
not-
not
Yeah.
doing tummy time, or moved enough.
Yeah. He was probably
Right.
at this point a little
Right.
young for tummy time just yet, but the movement,
Mhm.
the blood flow, the oxygen that is required on the back for all newborns,
Yeah.
healthy, medically fragile, all babies.
Right.
That is like a sure sign for the
Yeah.
healthiest of baby. I mean, but with all of these things, I feel like if they're going to be seized and taken into the state's care, then there needs to, especially because if if they were abused too, like, wouldn't they need follow-up medical
Yeah.
care and exams to make sure things are healing properly,
Yeah.
things are going well? Like, why are these appointments not
Mandatory.
Why are they? And truth be told, it shouldn't even come at a cost to the foster family. Like, there should be medical professionals that aren't corrupt,
Yeah.
that do these things to make sure that these babies are getting all the medical care that they need, from abuse, from something that happened during birth, something that happened in gestation. Like, why are those things not provided? If they care so much about the child's well-being,
They
'cause
don't care
that's
about the child's well-being.
No,
They
they
care about the
don't.
money.
They don't care about
If they would take just a small portion of that
No.
money to put into these kind of testings and make it mandatory.
No, they don't do any of that because it's a bunch
Well,
of bullshit.
It is.
when Parker
Sorry.
was, no, it's fine. When Parker was in the Medicaid with the foster care insurance, we asked about second opinions. Can we take him somewhere else? And we were not given that opportunity, especially when I tried to take them to places and they wouldn't even, they just look in the computer and say, nope,
That's crazy.
nope.
That is
So
crazy.
that's one of the things on Fractured Families is everyone used to always say, don't take them to a doctor in that state. Get out of the state, take them to another doctor, because it's all connected. They're all in bed with each other, and
Yep.
they don't want to jeopardize their careers by actually investigating and say, wait a minute, maybe this isn't abuse.
Yep.
I mean,
The oath that they
ended
took
up
really doesn't exist. They're not practicing under any
right.
oath but the devil's.
Mhm.
Like that to me, that has just been very clear, case after case, family after family. And like it's alarming the amount of people that are affected by this, but the number of children, and this is just a small fraction of the terrible things that are going on, and how many children's lives are being like ripped to shreds by the government.
I don't think that these people here in Pike County expected for me and my husband to step in the way that we did. I think most of the time, I think that, well, like Terilyn and Tyler were very young, and they probably looked like a pretty easy target. I think
Yeah.
at the time that this happened, my daughter had blue hair,
Yeah.
and she was in the hospital with a child with a broken leg with blue hair, and she's 19 years old. So I think they kind of looked at that as, oh, this is going to be easy. We're going to get this kid. And I'm sorry, but you're not getting my grandson. And
Yep.
I will go to the grave trying to get him
Yes.
back. And that's what I did. I'm so glad that I hired Allison Crane. She was a go-getter. She's a very
I wanna meet
interesting
her. I've heard her name a few
individual, but
times now, and I just wanna see
she
her in
is
action.
amazing.
Um, one of the
She's
other
amazing.
things in the trial, you mentioned that there were certain or specific things that the judge was like, "We are not gonna talk about this," or "This isn't gonna be talked about." Can you share some of those things with us if you're allowed to or comfortable doing so?
Yes. Okay. So one of the things that was not allowed to be mentioned, uh, our attorney had got us to get together a character witness list for my daughter's character. And we had about 5 individuals that we had got in contact with that had agreed to come to court and testify for her character. Terilyn always worked in the church nursery. She loved babies. So she was always in the church nursery, giving her time to care for the children. She would babysit for people that, wanted babysitters. So we were able to get some of those people together, and we were told that they were not allowed to talk about her with children.
Mm?
They weren't allowed to mention how Terilyn was with children.
That's
So
great.
I'm like, that was the whole purpose of our character witness,
Yeah.
See, this is
that was the whole
another one of
purpose
those
of it.
that's another one of those we've heard this multiple times where I'm like, "Wait, but that is evidence." That's like that is your defense. That's part of your defense. How are we not allowing that? That is crazy. So
Yeah.
then nobody should be able to talk about her with children from the other side either.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to work that way. That is crazy. God, that's crazy.
It does not work correctly at all. It's sickening.
Yes, it is.
The only day that I was allowed to be in court was the day of closing arguments because they had rested their case. So I was allowed to go in for closing arguments. And I listened to our attorney go up there and do his closing argument, and it was good. It was good, and it made sense, and everything he said was true. And then I had to listen to the state. It was absolutely disgusting.
Oh.
It turned my stomach. I couldn't even eat lunch. And if I had been a juror and I had to listen to that, I don't know, I might have come to the same conclusion they did. if I hadn't heard about this or knew about this.
I also feel like as a juror
But
though,
it was
I
all
would want to I would want to hear the other side. Because you are allowed to request more questions, or you want to ask a witness questions, or you want to hear another side. Like as a juror, I would have wanted to hear both sides.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like both sides were allowed the same freedoms, like as a juror, I would want to know, like, wait, so did the defense have, I want to know, does the defense have something to counter what this
The
person
state is
said or
saying.
this person said? Yeah, like I want to know, is there a response to this? Because then if not, then yeah, I'm probably going to believe everything I've heard because they don't have an argument. But as a juror, I feel like I would have wanted to know, do they have a counter argument, like something
Yeah.
to come back
So
at
how
this?
how it works is the state gets to get up and do part of their closing statement to start. And then the defense gets up and they give their closing argument. But then the state gets another opportunity to come up and finish their closing argument. So the last thing they're left hearing is what the state has said. And it just,
And I guess I would imagine that in the defense attorney's defense, that they're not allowed to say, the state's going to say A, B, and C, or they're going to claim A, B, and C, but we have character witnesses that were ready and fully prepared to testify. But
can't
that
say
wasn't
that?
like, you can't say that. That's so messed up.
That is
is
messed up.
so messed up. What's justice? Like, what is that? What is a
there is
fair
none.
trial? Like, oh my gosh.
There is none.
No, this is disgusting, honestly.
They actually brought up Reid in the closing argument. I think they actually talked about Reid throughout the whole trial. Reid was taken when he was, oh my goodness, he was only a couple weeks old, I think. I can't remember, but it was very early. And babies they move their hands around and they'll grab their face and they'll pinch at their face. And well, Reid was doing that. They've got little fingernails, and he pinched his little eyelid, and he had a little mark there with a little bruise where he had pinched it when he was, doing what babies do. That's why they make the mittens.
Oh, my
put on your
youngest
hands.
son, he lived with mittens and socks on his hands because it looked like a cat got a hold of him. So much so that he had this whole cheek was like covered in eczema and it was itching. And you can't put too much of the medicine on it because it will make it worse and make it spread. But his whole cheek for like 2 months was like raw because he would just still rub it like with the mittens on, but he would have little nicks and things, like even on his like he would grab his other arms, like literally, if we had to keep those things on him constantly because he did exactly what you're talking about. Exactly.
And he did. Reid pinched his little eyelid, and the state used that as abuse. They actually had one of their doctors say that babies don't do that.
Oh my God.
And it's like, why do they make mittens?
Yeah, somebody is an actual multi-millionaire for creating the little baby mittens. Like, why? What?
Yeah,
Oh
they actually used that and said that the cycle was repeating with Reid, that they
Yeah.
had started the abuse cycle again on Reid.
That's
That
like
the
saying
eyes
babies
are
don't
one
get
of the
baby
things that
baby
people
or diaper
abuse.
rash. Like, that's like literally that's like saying babies don't get diaper rash.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It worked.
Okay.
It worked. They got their guilty verdict.
That's crazy.
Was everyone on the jury like not parents?
They're all old.
Oh.
There was a lot of
They
older
probably
people on that
didn't,
jury.
the little baby mittens probably didn't exist.
Probably not.
So okay, as far as the gene, you said gene deletion? Is
Yeah.
that the correct
Yes.
word? Okay. The ZNF 675. So we know that that came from Terrelin.
Mhm.
And obviously the vitamin D, her nausea, anxiety did, but as I guess growing up when she was younger, did she have any similar health issues from a standpoint of like were her bones easy to break? Like, because I know my brother broke like every bone, but I wasn't like that. Like we were both very different. Our bones were just very different. I just wanted to know for her when she was younger, was she more prone to anything similar to what Parker has gone through?
Carolyn was always a little overweight, and she was not an active child. She never really did much playing outside. She was more inside. I never noticed anything odd with her. She didn't break bones. Now, my other son, my son, that child would break a bone in an instant.
Yeah.
He is like, whew. I wouldn't be surprised if this. Well, I do know that Tyler also has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Both
Okay.
him and Terrelin went and visited Dr. Hollick in Boston
Okay.
at the beginning of this because we were trying to get answers. So they did both go to Boston and be evaluated by him. They
Okay.
both were diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Tyler's is Marfan's syndrome, I think, which is a bit worse. Like his joints like pop out all the time. He can sit there and pop them out. It's disgusting. He doesn't. It doesn't. I've actually seen him pop his jaw out and rotate his jaw around, and I'm like,
Oh,
please
Oh
don't
my
ever do that
God,
again.
he's like one
But
of
I
those
mean,
people that's on like
it's
America's Got Talent. That's just weird stuff.
yeah, yeah, it's and I don't know what it's called, but he can do his shoulders a certain way, and his shoulder blades are like this far off his back. It's like
Oh, it
this
reminds
is
me of like a
just
scary
disgusting.
movie. Like he could be an extra in a scary movie, like The Exorcist, or like
yeah.
a scary movie where the zombies or something, just like the weird way people's bodies can move.
But
Ugh,
yeah,
it looks painful.
I know.
um,
It's
I
not for
know
them.
it's not. It doesn't hurt him,
Mhm.
but
It's odd.
it's but so I wasn't
Yeah.
surprised at all when he came back. And Ehlers-Danlos has a lot. It's a lot more common than people think. Um, it's just not known about. It's not like doctors don't like get certified in EDS. You know, you have to be a certain doctor. So a lot of times when Tyler was young, I learned that his mom would have to take him to the doctor a lot for different issues. So he'd have stomach issues, or he'd have this issue or that issue, and he'd be diagnosed with all these separate conditions. Well, it all goes up under Ehlers-Danlos, and I think that's why people don't know that they have it, because like Tyler, when he came and moved in with us, and we were having issues with him working, it's because he would come and wake me up and say, I'm sick. I don't feel good. I can't go to work. I'm throwing up. And I'm like, well, you throw up an awful lot, you know, and I'm thinking you just don't want to work. And then I come to realize that this is part of Ehlers-Danlos, and they never knew this. They never knew that he had it. They never knew all this stuff was connected. Parker vomits quite a bit. And I'm like, I was thinking, you know, me and my husband, we were still in the beginning of this and we didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, well, he just drank tea. Maybe it's the tea. Maybe he don't need to drink tea. And so we would withhold tea. Well, then it would be something else. And I'm like, this is weird that and then he vomits and then he's fine.
Yep.
And so Dr. Hollick told me that that's part of Ehlers-Danlos. I can't remember the exact medical term that he used, but that Parker needs to eat smaller meals during the day, not to do so much at one time, because that will cause him to throw it up. He
Yeah,
had
it's like the
GERD. He was
digestive,
diagnosed.
yeah, like the
Yes,
digestive system isn't able to handle all of it at one time. That makes
right.
sense.
And I believe that's where his busted blood vessels came from in his eyes, was from all the spitting up that he was doing.
Yes.
He
Yep.
was just projectile vomiting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we think, that's where that came from. So
We only have about 10 more
But-
minutes before we have to let her go. So
Yeah,
do you have
I've
any more
got
questions?
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
So during pregnancy, when they do, I should say pregnancy or gestation, they do like genetic testing to, and I know on the surface there it's like they're going to test for genes or certain abnormalities that may show signs of Down syndrome or just different things. I know that there's a lot of other things that are tested for as well. But I was just curious, was genetic testing done during pregnancy with Parker? If so, once or twice, sometimes they do it more. But if so, were there any abnormalities, or would even the ZNF 6-7, like would any of that have shown in those tests?
I don't think so,
Okay.
because I remember doing those tests as well. I don't know if they did those tests. I'm sure that they probably did, but I know Carolyn would get things back every now and again, and she would just say, well, they said it was nothing to worry about. Well, they said
Yeah.
it was nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so she didn't really know, and I don't, I don't really know. I wasn't allowed to go, but I don't think that she told me like the Down syndrome. I failed that myself with Carolyn. Scared me to death. I thought my baby was going to have Down syndrome, but she turned out fine. But so I know which test you're talking about, but I don't remember her telling me that she flunked any of those
Yeah,
tests.
and truth be told, like even with all 3 of my kids, none of the pregnancies were during COVID, but like
Yeah.
if the doctor wasn't telling me that something was even remotely off, like there could have been something that was maybe a little off, and the doctor was like, I'm not worried about this, so we'll just do another test and then see what happens or whatever. But like I wouldn't know. And you're not really, for me, I was never asking questions either. I just thought, the doctor will tell me if something isn't right. Especially when I had my first son at 17. So when you're that young, it's kind of like, oh Lord, just get me out of here. Like if everything's okay, let me go home, like, oh, I don't want to be here. I feel I'm getting judged, you know. People probably think I'm like somebody else's kid here because I'm too young to be in here. So I get it 100%. Okay, the doctor that came to testify that had never seen Parker before, were there any questions that were asked, or was the defense able to ask why that doctor was the one that was on the stand instead of the doctor that actually saw Parker? Or was that just not brought up?
And see, I wasn't in there when he was there. I wasn't allowed to be, but I do not recall my husband telling me that they ever asked him that it was ever brought up. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure, but that would have been one of mine, right? Immediately.
Yes. Yeah.
Why are you here instead of Dr. Aaron Reid?
Yes. And the last question I had, I mean, I really do have like 100 more, but the last one, can the charges and like the sentencing, are they able to appeal? Is there an appeals process? Like, are they able to fight this after the fact?
Okay, so like I said in the beginning, they had about 19 charges each on them. And I know they ended up dropping, I think, 2 charges for some reason. Once the jury had to vote on every single charge. So we sat there for what felt like 10, 15 minutes of the judge going on charge, blah, blah, blah. guilty, not guilty. So there were some that were not guilty, not guilty. They started out coming back with not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. And I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. We're going to win this thing. And then all of a sudden I heard guilty. And then it was nothing but guilty, 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 guilty. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was devastated. But we were, any noise, any look, anything, the judge would throw us out. And so we had to sit there and endure that. But what they ended up doing was, and I don't understand how it all works, but they merged charges somehow. And it ended up going down to a total of, I think, 7 charges that they were charged with instead of the 19 that it began. And they called my husband. First, they called me, our attorney called me up there to talk to the judge about what I felt her sentence should be, and then my husband. And then they did the same thing for Tyler and for his family. And, I told the judge, I said, this is my daughter, and I know that she did not do this. And I'm just asking you for leniency, because the child has never, ever been in trouble. She was never trouble growing up, other than smart enough to her mom and dad. I mean, she never snuck out of the house. She never did anything wrong. And I'm just really begging you for leniency for her. And then my husband got up there and, oh my goodness, he was a mess, and he just busted down and he was crying. And, we, in the midst of all of this, I lost my father in June. It's been 2 years ago. 7 months later, I lost my middle daughter to a drunk driver. Mm-hmm. Her and her boyfriend were moving to Oklahoma. She was 18. She had just graduated in December. And they were traveling to Oklahoma to start their life, which I did not like. She knew I didn't like it. But, there's nothing I could do. And they never made it to Oklahoma. Drunk driver got on the wrong side of the expressway and hit them head on and killed them both instantly. So, lost my daughter, lost my dad, and now I've lost my daughter to prison. And my husband was just a mess up there, and he just told the judge, can't do this, and I can't lose another child. And I think that judge honestly took him into consideration. I was told that my husband really made an impact on the judge. And I really, truly don't think the judge believes that these kids hurt their child. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why the sentence was so light, because they were facing 360 years in prison. And they both only got 18 months. So they'll be out in a year and a half. They've got some time served. Tyler's max out date is March of 25, and Terrelyn's is September of 25. They shouldn't be in there at all, because they didn't do anything to their child. But I am grateful that it's a light sentence. It's still scary, because when you go to prison for something like child abuse and those other inmates find out, you can get killed for that. So Tyler just got moved today from Jackson State Prison to a prison in Milledgeville. Thank God, because Tyler has, I got to talk to him a couple times. They threw away all his phone numbers. He didn't have my number memorized, so he doesn't know my phone number, so he don't call me. And they won't let him add my number. So I have to do 3-way call with his mom's. And, but yeah, he was moved to, let me see, Riverbend State Prison and Rehabilitation in Milledgeville. He said it's so much better, because in Jackson, he had already seen somebody stabbed in the neck, and he had seen them inmates on synthetic drugs, geeking out. And he said he's seen one inmate get jumped in the shower and laid there for 3 days before help came for him. So I'm glad he's out of there because he doesn't deserve to be there. He doesn't deserve to be anywhere but home. But he served quite a bit of time before he was released before. So he gets out before Terrellyn. Terrellyn is in Lee Arundel State Prison, which is an all women's facility. And she did tell me, she said, "Mom, it's not as bad as I thought it would be, but I still don't want to be here. I want to come home."
Mhm.
And I understand that. But I did find out a couple days ago, she had already received a letter from the prison parole board saying that she would not be eligible for parole, that she would serve the entire time. We were told at court that day that the judge said that they have to serve 65% of their time, and then they would be eligible for parole. Well, for some reason now they've decided neither one of them are eligible for parole. They'll have to serve their entire sentence, which is still better than 360 years, but it's very disappointing.
Mhm.
Wow. You are
And
one.
they can appeal, but what's that?
Go ahead.
Okay. We can appeal, but we honestly don't think that it's going to do much good. They'll probably be out of prison before an appeal even comes back to be able to go to court. So they've got 18 months to serve, 15 years of probation. They're going to be allowed to see Parker as soon as they're released from prison. They just have to be supervised, and they will have to be supervised with their children until their children are 8 years old, and then they can be with them without supervision after that. So
It's a long
just
road
deal
and
with it.
you're so strong.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you made a comment that you think that the way that she was raised and the way that you guys raised her was maybe hurt her, but I think I don't think that. I don't think you should think that, because just like we've said with the other families and cases, in this case, like, because parents that abuse their children spend money on doctors and attorneys, and because would lie, or whatever the caseworker was lying about, like, or that you were paying all of her bills, like, in
That's
order
what
to
my mom would
afford,
do.
but in order to afford all the attorneys, be the caregiver for a child that you were not expecting to have. Like, it's not like, you had saved money and were financially prepared to bring another baby into the home, all the doctors, even with health insurance, like, that's another whole scam that our country does. But, like, you're doing every single thing that a good mother would do, and you had up until this point, and now you're just doing more that most moms don't and grandmas don't have to ever fathom. So I really hope that you lose that doubt or those thoughts in your head that you could have done something different or done something better to change any of this. Like, you have surpassed the best of parenting. Like, now you're doing stuff that you're not required to do. You've raised your child, and you've got to start to appreciate all the things that you are doing, especially in such difficult and devastating times, because most human beings would not be able to carry all of this and still show up and do all the things that you're doing to the level that you're doing them. So just remember, you're a badass, and a lot of people would be so lucky to have you as a mom and a grandma, for real. For
I
real.
appreciate it. That means a lot. It's hard. It's been hard.
Yes.
I feel
And we
like
still,
I grew
Yeah.
up as an only child, and so I was kind of sheltered, being an only child.
Mhm.
And yeah, you should not feel that
No,
way.
no,
You shouldn't feel that way.
no. And with that being said, don't let the evil of the world change the great parenting you did.
Hmm.
No matter what, no one can fix the entire world. We can only fix ourselves and do the best that we can. And we can't save our children from everything, no matter how much we think we prepared them or not. Like, you loved your daughter, you still do. You did everything that a phenomenal mom does. And just don't have guilt or question that. It, to me, it is very, very certain and obvious that you did a great job, a very good job, and you still are now for your grandson. So don't
Yeah.
lose those
I love
thoughts.
them little boogers. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for spending time and, tears and all the heartache that this all, you know, brings up, having to talk about it, but we really appreciate it. And we know our listeners are listening because
Yes, they are.
We tell everybody,
Yeah.
please go listen to the last 4 cases
Yeah, I'm
of
like,
You Are
I
the
better
Power.
be on here. I get texts all day, messages on Instagram that's like, people are mad,
People
and
are
that's
mad.
good. That's a good thing.
Yes.
We're all
That's
fired
Yeah.
up.
Yes, that's a
And
very.
it feels like we're so alone
Mhm.
because I mean, you don't hear of these cases a lot. I hadn't heard of it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but I still feel like now, especially with my daughter getting a guilty verdict, I feel like when I go out, people look at me and go, "There's that mom whose daughter abused her child,"
Mhm.
and it hurts because I know she didn't.
Yeah.
And we're currently in the fixing to sell our house and move away so that we can start over fresh.
Mhm.
Just because, and my husband's lived here his whole life, and everybody we know is here. But this is really just it. It has knocked us down. It
Yeah.
has, but doggone it, we're going to get back up and keep trying because we can't let them win.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
can't.
Yes. If y'all ever need anything from us, please reach out. Let us know if you want to share something else or give an update. Any of that, please let us know. If there's anything we can share, any
you-
resources, anything, just please reach out. We are happy to do so, and we're gonna keep trucking with you and fighting this with you and just trying to spread as much awareness as possible.
I appreciate what y'all are doing. I do. It's a big deal. It's a big deal when you feel like you don't have anybody that's listening. I'm so grateful for you guys for this.
Now you have a big, big, big audience.
Yes. Yes.
Who are all pulling for you.
And I told you about this much
Yeah,
of a story
yeah.
that is huge. There's so much involved and so much that doesn't get to get talked about, but it has all been very, very corrupt. It's
Yes.
just corrupt. There's no
Yep.
other way to say it.
Absolutely.
It's bad. It's good.
Hug
Thank
those
you.
babies for us, and please tell Terrlyn and Tyler when you speak to them that we're out here doing everything we possibly can to and to keep their heads up.
Thank you. I will. I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We really
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you. All
Bye.
right. Bye, y'all.
We weren't that late. Getting her off. Holy shit, son.
Dude, I don't care how many times this happened. I'm like,
Oh, we've already got the girl from Missouri wants to talk.